Testing 1, 2, testing 1, 2. Carrie, can you hear me? Yeah, I think I figured out what the issue is. For some reason, it does not like the fact that I don't have a camera plugged in, and it messes with the audio. Because all I did was adjust the camera settings, and all of a sudden, I'm working. Anyway, I'll have to remember that for next time. Hopefully um, that will allow for a quicker to get it to work. Uh, um, just as we start tonight, I titled this as being "They Said What," and everything I'm going to say is for entertainment purposes only. We're just going to take a look at some of the things that have been said, and it doesn't have to necessarily be by one particular person. These things are going to sit there and go and look like it should be just a normal thing. But when you look at what's going on and the fact that it is more than what meets the eye. But first and always, I try to begin with 5 first things. If you're living in the Gilmore City, Iowa area this evening, my prayers and thoughts are with you as it looks like some nasty tornadoes are going through your area. I had Ryan Hall, who is a really good YouTube weather state channel. He not only does predictions, but he does when something like tornadoes are actively on the ground, some massive storms. He is on telling you street addresses, not to dox somebody, but he's telling you locations of a store or a cross street that he is zooming in on and saying, if you're near this area, this is where the storm is right now. Or if you know where this area is, you better be in your safe place. And it's an awesome, awesome thing he does. I just wanted to mention him because I think he needs more and more people's support for what he is doing. It's worth he's doing something that the Weather Channel, the national broadcasters, and some even the local broadcasters can't do. So let's see, 5 first things. That's one. Number 2, there is a woman missing a teenager missing in Florida, who was had the feeling that she was being followed yesterday morning on her way to school, and I forgot her name, so bear with me a moment here. Sage Styles, who has thankfully, according to the police, been found safe. But it's a horrifying and scary thing for somebody to have to experience, especially at the age of, I believe she was only 15 years old, 16 years old, to feel like you're being stalked and followed. and she made a turn into the woods or in a wooded area, and nobody had seen her for over 24 hours. So it's a good thing to know that she is home and safe now. That was all over the news recently. Uh, yeah, Carrie. Honestly, I was thinking that we are going to have to start focusing on her to find out what happened and get her story out there more, because that just could have been really bad situation. And although I'm sure, um, of course, we're always keeping an eye on two other stories that at least I'm currently keeping an eye of on. One is going to be Michael Vaughn, and prayers and thoughts with her family always. And on bringing Michael Vaughn home. And his mom is always in going into chats that are live streams that mention him and saying, yes, we will be bringing Michael home. And I hope she is right. I really hope that she's right, that Michael Vaughn will come home. The other story is always going to be covering is Evelyn Boswell. I had mentioned last week that there was that there's procedural issues going on, and on Thursday there was a court hearing, attempt at separating charges, and I don't think there has been a ruling entered on that. However, I do believe that there is not going to be a separation of charges, especially after the testimony of one of the detectives that got onto the stand and said that she told the detectives that her daughter, Evelyn Boswell, is the daughter. Megan's the mother. Evelyn Boswell was dead a week before the investigators found Evelyn. And she is a 15-month-old that was very unfortunate, very, very unfortunate situation that she was um, uh, met with ultimately. Um, Story number 5. Uh, hmm. I didn't have a prepared list. That's why I'm thinking about this for a moment. Gary, is there anything that I'm missing that's hash beating on like a national story that with missing kids right now, besides summer? Because we are going to be talking about summer tonight. Hello, Lisa. How are you tonight? Okay, so my first 5 things, I think I'm going to let it go of being 4 tonight, because I just don't think of. I'm not thinking of another one off the top of my head. Well, that's just fine, because my big 5 things doesn't always have to be 5. Sometimes being 4 is better than 5. Lisa, thank you for joining us. This is only the second time I've been live, so please bear with me. I'm going to get better and better each and every time. Um, so with time, it will get better. And So the previous stream I had done was on telling the truth about the uppers. Just to go back over that just a little tiny bit here, and the there's not been a whole lot of information coming out after that or on that yet. That's going to take a little bit more time. What's going to really happen is if that video and that information it takes traction and people start to realize who the uppers are, they're just simply going to disappear. They're not going to be available or to guide or to be available for their services any longer. So either one of two things is going to happen. You're going to hear just they're just going to disappear from the story, with no consequences, of course, to them, or it's that they're going to become more involved, because goodness knows that the wells need more and more people involved to guide them, because if without any heavy hand guidance, they will go astray quickly. They'll go and just go off on rabbit trails, and without this guidance of this group, they're going to cause themselves more harm than good. Well, Carrie, Lisa, rather, I personally thank you for being here. I try to be as informative as possible. And some of the things, some of the topics, as I'm talking about the uppers right now, from my last video, Lisa, it really is. It really is. But my point is that if I'm correct about who the uppers are, you can just outright say it's going to turn into a shit show. There's no other way of saying it. Either this group is going to disappear and say we cannot have anything to do with this any longer, or they're going to be to the point where the wells are not going to be online making lives, making and putting information out there because of the exposure. This group does not want exposure of who they could possibly even be. Okay. Lisa, don't worry about it. You're well. I'll be more than happy to post a link in here. You'd have to be very forgiving. Approximately the first 10 minutes or so, I had audio issues that I was having struggling to figure out, and finally did figure it out. So the video says it's 1 hour and 5 minutes long, but really it's only about 55 minutes long. So that's fine. I'm just glad you found us, and glad you're here. Well, Carrie, let's be honest. The top of the uppers is huge. When you look at what it is, it's a huge topic. It's just you've asked me questions, Carrie, because you are one of my Discord people that they have. You know, it's the information I presented, and I tried to be upfront and answer questions about it, but there's still questions about it. You know, there's still questions about who these people are, and how heavily involved are they? And I try to be too, Lisa. I try to be a very patient person, and I that's why I like to take on big topics. I like to be the person to sit there and go, well, this is what this is. This is what this is saying. And how does it work? How is it the truth? You know, and break it down as much as possible to get it there. Yes, yes, it is very interesting. Um, and like I said, if it is the truth, one of two things are going to happen. Either the wells are not going to be have anything to do with social media, just all of a sudden be gone, or it is Lisa. That is fine. As you see, I'm a very small channel. I just started last week, and this was the topic that I started off with was a spin off of a question that I was actually working on researching since September, October. And John QQ, if you know who he is, asked a particular question. And for some reason, the way he worded that question, it spun puzzle pieces around in my head, and all these pieces of information that I was had already found just all of a sudden locked in. And I couldn't sit there and say, I'm going to sit on this information anymore. This is information that I need to share, and I need to start talking about it because I have a perspective that somebody else may not have thought about. I'm not trying to sit here and go rehash what happened to Summer Wells. I'm not going to sit here and there's so many channels that have done that 1,000 times over, looked at details. And I'm simply going to sit here and go and say, sometimes there's information that we need to take another look at. And this is where I think it's appropriate for me, since it's so late in the Summer Wells being missing. Although I've been covering Summer Wells since the from the get go. I live in the Tri-Cities area, Tri-Cities, Tennessee area. And I remember hearing the dispatch call for Summer Wells being missing for the police that very on June 15th. I remember when that the dispatch call went out. So that's how long I've been following and commenting on Summer Wells. So I'm going to switch myself up a little bit here, and we're just going to take a look at one of the things that I want to focus on tonight, and take really a deeper look into of what I mean by they said what. So Don Wells was quoted on multiple times, and this was specifically to Brian Entin of News Nation on November 16th, 2021. Someone snuck up there, and we were not exactly paying attention. And we don't know if they came in the basement and grabbed her, or if she stepped outside the basement and was walking to her swing or something. That's what he said to Brian Entin. 3, 4 months, 5 months later. So it begs the question: were you home, or were you at work? Because up until this point, Don Wells was insisting that he was at work at that time. He was insisting up until this very time when he spoke to Brian Entin that he was at work, and that he had called 911 on his way home from work. But this quote is saying just the opposite. It's squarely putting him at 110 Ben Hill Road and says that we were not paying attention. We were not taking care of our child. We were not paying we were not being responsible parents. We were not keeping an eye on her. She was wandering freely. She was a free spirit at that time. It's little details like this that it's little details like this that I'm going to be pointing out that they want to adjust or they want to set a narrative, and they inadvertently punch holes in their own narrative the whole entire time. Now, there's something to be said about a liar. A liar has to tell more lies to cover the lies that they have already told if they cannot remember the lies that they told originally. And if you pay attention to every single thing that Don Wells and Candace Bly have said, that is exactly what you have going on. To further my point about him being home that day, Don Wells has a certain reputation that most days, it's commonly known, most days, Don Wells will take one of his pickup trucks or the pickup trucks that are on the property, whether it's his or his mother-in-law's, to work. But on multiple occasions, since they purchased the Subaru, Don Wells will take the Subaru to work. I've heard as many as 6 times, but I cannot confirm that 6 times. So we'll just say it's multiple times. On all those days when Don Wells went out to work, he groomed himself differently than a normal day. He wasn't dressed for work. He was in better clothes than he would normally wear to work. And when he went and took the Subaru on those days and dressed better than he would normally do, no matter if he took his tools or not, these are the days that he would go and visit frequent places of ill repute and go looking for his drug of choice on that day. There's a rumor, and I heard this I've heard this multiple places, and this has also been said on YouTube. And there's credence to this rumor that on the day before and day of Summer Miss Gone Missing, June 14th and June 15th, Don Wells was not at work when he said he was at work. The rumor is that Gary, you're close. You're very, very close. Those were delivery days, but it was more of he was running on those days. He was out, and the rumor is that goes around Kingsport is that he was actually out looking for a kilo. And if you know the area that is Northeast Tennessee, it has its spells with cycles with and the very short-lived cycles of what is popular for drugs. The drugs that it cycles through is heroin, meth, and cocaine. In particular, the drug of choice for the Wells, now again, this is per the rumor, was that the kilo that he was going looking for was for was cocaine. Wasn't the meth, wasn't the heroin. And if you want to know where these other items, the other drugs are more popular, it's in the areas that connect from Kingsport to Bristol. Out on 11E, heading out towards Bristol. In that stretch of area that very seldom do people live. And usually when you do live out there, you're talking a good mile between your closest neighbor. That people are had been and Tennessee has seriously cracked down on this, which is, Tennessee has done huge strides to make this better. There's actually a registry in Tennessee for a person that is on meth that they have to go and after they go through rehab or go through their sentencing whatnot, they have to register this. Not unsimilar to being a SA offenders list. And this is way that people are aware that this person or this area is known to have this there, that they can stay away. The list is a state registry list. It can be searched just by searching for Tennessee meth registry. But the area that everybody says, oh, meth and heroin are so popular there. No, they're not. They're in the outlier areas. They're in the in between. They're not in the cities. You have to go looking for that to find it. Whereas something like cocaine, pot, more frequently used stuff, that's what you find in the cities. Bear with me just a few seconds here. I need to mute myself for a second. My apologies about that. And anyway, I'm getting myself sidetracked and led down a little rabbit trail there. But the point is that on the day of, or the day after, excuse me, or the day before, that Summer had went missing. I do not believe that Don Wells was at work as he said he was. And if you believe the rumor that he was out searching for drug of choice, that this is absolutely true. Either he worked a part of the day before, possibly up until the point where he fired his so-called partner, his work partner. And then he took the rest of the day off where he said he had to be cleaning up his mess. He actually took that rest of the day off and then had intention to go back the next day to do so. No rabbit trails. No rabbit trails tonight. Well, I think that was actually a bit of a necessary rabbit trail. Because it did give a little bit of background and information to understand why I'm saying that he wasn't at work and he wasn't doing what he said he was. No rabbit holes tonight. I get it now. Lisa, I for as much as I live about a 15-minute drive, I'm glad I don't drive, because the whole Molly Go Lately situation that happened would have happened a long time ago. But because I don't drive, I have to sit back and stay patient, and which is a good thing because there's other things that go on that let's just say I have a tendency to have predictive or prophetic thoughts about things. And I've come up with some very, at the time that said, sounds crazy statements, but time has proved them to be correct. I'll give you an example one in just a little bit, but I'm going to get on to more of information about these statements. So even if Don was at work that day, the day that Summer went missing, he's been known to take long lunch breaks of 2 hours or longer. So again, we have the opportunity to head that he was on the property at the time that Summer supposedly went missing and then went back to work. And I'm not getting into a detail of what I believe happened. I'm just making the statement of there's a time window, a time frame in which people, these two people, both Don Wells and Candace Bly, leave wide open with no explanation that could be fit into that time frame in which they try to gloss over for June 15th. Depending on who you listen to, they could have been returning to the property, the 110 Ben Hill Road, from all the errands they ran that morning, including going to the swimming hole, approximately 1:30, 2:30 in the afternoon. Okay. That's not even the heat of the day for around this area. The high does not happen in this area till 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It is still cool at that time of day. For June 15th, I believe, if I remember the weather correctly, it hit 81 or 82 degrees that day for the high. And at the time of the day that they supposedly went swimming, it still would have been in the 70s. Another statement that he makes, and this is a quote that was in the Kingsport Times News interview. I don't have a person's name of who did the interview. This is found on YouTube. The quote is that if he can't sleep, DW, Don Wells, will go down and talk to the police and hang out with them. This is good during the search when they were going and searching through the woods and the different areas around the property. But that's not what happened. That's not what happened. Yes, he would go down and talk to the police, but it was to complain to the police about the thank you, Carrie. I appreciate that. The interviewer was Jeff Bobo. I don't want to leave off credit to the person that did this originally. Had the interview originally. That he went and it went down to the police, and whenever he could publicly speak about this, he would sit there and say and complain about the noise of the searching that happened at nighttime, especially with the helicopters going overhead. His complaint was that it kept him up at night. He could not sleep and rest to be able to work the next day. So where's your focus? Is work so important that you can't sleep? You can't focus on your job? Or is it that you are so placing such a lack of importance on Summer Wells and her being missing that you're narcissistic and putting your need for sleep as a parent ahead of what your child being missing. And Lisa, I'm not ignoring comments in the chat. I just wanted to get that point out. I'm very sorry that you have issues with seizures as well. Oh, he's very sick. He's very sick, and it's these are just a few points of things I've caught, and I have the biggest one coming up yet. I have the biggest one coming up yet that nobody talks about, but consistently repeats this quote. I'm going to take a look at one that Candace made. And this was a WJHL, I believe it was WJHL interview that she said this in, which would have aired on June 29th. 14 days after Summer had gone missing, WJHL worked extremely hard to get both Don and Candace to sit down for an interview that they had been pursuing since they were since Summer had gone missing. Finally, at the point of 2 weeks, that they agreed to sit down with them and have this interview. And this is part of a larger quote. It's a one sentence in particular that was tagged onto the quote at the very end of it. And she says, "It hurts to see your other kids crying over Summer Wells missing. It hurts to see your other kids crying over Summer Wells missing." Never did she say that I am grief-stricken. This is horrifying. I am in pieces. I am an emotional wreck. Anything that would be appropriate over her daughter missing. It wasn't that there was an emotional response until she made the comment that it was her other kids, the boys, were having an emotional response, that it invoked an emotional response in her. Think about that one. It wasn't that Summer was missing that caused the emotional response. It was that the boys were having an emotional response to Summer missing that caused an emotional response in her. That's exactly what she's saying. So where's her priority? I'll be honest. I am of the camp that that is on the internet right now. That Candace needs to go and speak to the police and come and be upfront with what happened. You know, I have a funny little story about my son who turns 18 on Thursday. And this was when he was a baby, maybe 6 months old, 8 months at the most. No, let me correct that. It was probably his first win. Well, yeah, that would be his first winter. We're living in Massachusetts, and my ex-wife and I, we lived on the second floor of a building, and her parents owned the building and lived on the first floor. And this is really is just a minor communication issue. It really is nothing horrifying or horrible that happened. My son was safe the whole entire time. Thank you, Carrie. I appreciate that. So on our way out, a lot of the times it was customary for us. We'd stop in at my former in-laws or my ex-wife's parents' house, however you wish to phrase it. It doesn't offend me either way. We'd stop in and we'd say, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, um, let them know that we were headed out in this direction and we were going to this place, and say, "Hey, do you need anything while we're there?" And it was the same thing for them. If they were going out, especially we being wintertime, Massachusetts, it can get really really nasty really quick with snowfall totals. I was up there one winter, and a snow squall went through, and in 20 minutes time, it dropped 6 inches of snow. So you get that kind of snowstorms going on up there. Nonetheless, I digress from that. So, like I said, completely innocent. My ex-wife and I had just a minor communication issue. We were getting ready to leave, so I said I was going to go outside and start the car, get the car warmed up, get the heat going, get it warmed up, because it was, I would say, probably a day that was in the teens for a high. But we had to get to the store. We had no option. And so we wanted to make sure that the car was warmed up, and then that way, the her daughter from a previous relationship and our son was going into a warmed up environment. It didn't have to be blasting hot, but a warmed up environment. And the communication issue happened that I went outside. I never said that I was taking Christopher with me. And Christopher got left in the house with his grandmother. Christopher was not alone. He was left in the house with his grandmother, not in any danger or anything, because he was bundled up and strapped into his car seat. So he was not going to get hurt. No possibility of getting harmed in any way. We literally made it around the corner of the street that we lived on. And her daughter from a previous relationship had said, "Where's Christopher?" And that instant of panic flooded over both of us of what happened to Christopher. Just that quick. So I cannot imagine to have an emotional response like this. And this is why this point stands out to me so hard. You had no emotional response to Summer Wells missing, and you even stated you have no emotional response to Summer missing until your sons had an emotional response. That's when it evoked a response in you. Granted, I get that there is a bit of a reality that you have to allow to set in. But you would still have that moment of panic. And if you did have that and you're glossing over it, come out and say it. Because it will humanize you and cause more people to have sympathy for you and try to understand where you are. I don't care that it is almost 10 months later. I don't care that it's 10 months later. It's time for Candace, for you to start taking down that wall, that emotional block. If you had absolutely nothing to do with the disappearance of Summer, Start busting down that wall and let's see people see you're a human. Because right now, I think that's about the only thing that's going to save you. And who knows? Who knows? It is possible that because you're allowing that emotional block to stop, that you might have that memory that everybody can look into your eyes and say that you actually do have, and and you're not allowing it to come out. That could reveal so much about what happened to Summer. But it's all being dammed up because you refuse to admit that you had an emotional response. Now, here's the big thing, and I've only been, doing. If you look at the time that it is now, currently, I've been talking close to an hour, or going on an hour, and with it be just me myself, and trying to keep the lives not extremely long, so that way other people can get onto other lives, and enjoy other lives as well. Because, like I said, I'm not truly covering Summer Wells as I'm breaking down details and the length that others are. But here is the biggest thing, the single biggest thing that got me onto this point, got me onto this drive of what are they really saying? And bear with me a second here. I just lost something here. Uh, Bear with me just a moment, folks. I appreciate your patience with me. The biggest thing I want to focus on, and we're going to spend a few minutes on this, is that Don Wells, when he had said to the media one of the very first times of who he believes had done this, that took Summer Wells, because he's always said from day one that Summer was taken, Summer was kidnapped. The words that he used, and this is a paraphrased quote, it is not an exact quote, but the key wording is going to be the same, that it was a hillbilly druggie that came onto his property and took Summer Wells. Hillbilly druggie. Now, I understand that the Don Wells is not natively from Tri-Cities area. And sometimes a person might use phrasing that they've heard associated with a different region of a country, or the country, accidentally for an area. But that's not what this is. He's mixing what a hillbilly is and a person from Appalachia. Appalachia is the area that we live in, that the Tri-Cities lives in. Tri-Cities area, it's the Appalachia, or it's part of the Appalachia. And if you go north from here, you're still in the Appalachia, all the way up into Pennsylvania area. But when you start to describe Appalachia up in Pennsylvania, it's not really, it's part of the Appalachia, but it's no longer really the Appalachia. It starts to become uh, urbanized with cities of Pittsburgh and Harrisburg, and going west, you have Wheeling, West Virginia, and then you get into most of Ohio, and you get Cleveland, Cincinnati, and cities like that. Now, why am I pointing out these cities up in northern states? Yes, I am a Yankee by heart. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, and that's actually an important detail to this. Yeah, Lisa, I would agree that in part he actually is trying to talk. He's talking about himself, but he's still blaming somebody else. He still is blaming somebody else or trying to place the blame on somebody else. And this is what he's actually saying with the hillbilly druggie that came down and took his child. A hillbilly is a person, if you can imagine a map, okay, with the cities that I was just mentioning being your east edge, center, and left edge. Basically, from the Mason-Dixon line, which is if you're not familiar with that term, it's the border between Pennsylvania and Maryland, going all the way up north to the New York border and going west of Pittsburgh, going into Wheeling, West Virginia, going into Ohio, including Cleveland, even though Cleveland, Cincinnati, and the Ohio cities do not like to be referred to as this. You call somebody from these cities, you call them a hillbilly, it's the worst insult that you could possibly give them. But the truth is that they are from this region. Well, this knowledge that I'm giving you right now is I grew up outside of Philadelphia. And in Philadelphia, you have I've always heard of Pennsylvania being divided up into three basic regions, and the western part of Pennsylvania was always hillbilly country. The central portion of it, basically east of Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which is straight up I-81 from the Tri-Cities area, Tri-Cities, Tennessee area. You have God country, or the land for the Amish and the Mennonite. And then as you get into eastern Pennsylvania, it's just Philadelphia and its suburbs, or southeast Philadelphia and northeast Pennsylvania, southeast Pennsylvania, northeast Pennsylvania. Okay, so coming out of being raised in the Philadelphia area, you just know, at least to me, that this is common sense. This is what this is actually referring to. That he's referring to, he's referring to the land from Pittsburgh going through Ohio, I'm specifically mentioning Wheeling, West Virginia, because that's a tiny wedge of land that's between Ohio and Pennsylvania. That's part of West Virginia. That is kind of one of those deals where it really shouldn't be part of it, but it is part of West Virginia because it doesn't really attach to West Virginia. Okay. So he's saying that a person from this area of the country drove down to Tennessee, came onto his property, and took summer and then left again. I'm just going to pause here for a moment and let you guys let that sink in. A person from Pennsylvania through pretty much central Ohio decided they were going to drive down to Tennessee, to Northeast Tennessee, to find an 11, almost about an 11 and a half acre piece of land. In the idea that that child was going to be left unattended for the length of time that they would need that child to be unattended for to take her. Do you know how preposterous that statement is? This is one of the reasons why I say I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to. I'm tired. I'm not going to speak, or I'm not going to hold back from speaking any longer. No matter if this is a statement of ignorance from him not being from this region and not knowing that this is Appalachia. This is not hillbilly land. This is not redneck land. This is not the deep South, the dirty South. This is a statement of ignorance. A statement that he is using to explain something, but does not understand what he's explaining. I would give somebody credit, or I'll let them go ahead and say, they took a trip to Detroit, or they went to Pennsylvania, to Pittsburgh, to that area of the country, to Maryland from this area, to go to a zoo for a trip out with their kids. Granted, there's a zoo in Knoxville, there's a zoo in Nashville, and there's another one out in Memphis. But to be honest, if your intentions are going to go to the zoo that's out in Memphis, I'm just making a point here. Follow my example. You're planning a family trip or a date, if for that matter. If a woman that you're dating likes to go to see the zoo, I've dated a woman that likes to go walk around a zoo, and it was probably it's a great date. You go out, you go walk around together, you spend time talking with each other, and take a look at nature's beauty. Some amazing animals that nature has. It's a great date. Don't knock it. Take somebody you're dating out and do it to a zoo. But the point of this is a lot of times when a person from the Tri-Cities area has to go to do something in Memphis, but they can find the same product or find the same information, or get the same thing, and it happened to be in some of these other cities that I mentioned, Pittsburgh, Detroit. It is actually quicker for the persons that live in the Tri-Cities to go north to Detroit than it is for us to spend time to travel all the way out to Memphis. You can get to Detroit in this area in under 6, almost 7 hours. I think it is. It's probably closer to 6. Whereas there is times that it will take you 8 hours to get to Memphis from Northeast Tennessee. So I don't have an issue with, saying, I'm not trying to sit here and say that It's far fetched for somebody to in Northeast Tennessee to go to another state or to go take a drive to Detroit before they go and go cross state in Tennessee. I'm saying that it's probable that they would go to Detroit before they would go to Memphis, especially if they're going to get the same exact thing, but they're going to get it quicker. So where I'm going with this is that it is still. They say, yeah, it is. It is a long way away, but it still is a quicker trip to go to Detroit than it is to in some areas of the Tri Cities area than it is to get to Memphis. And it seems like it shouldn't be, but it is. However, what I'm keying on here is not that it's it's not a short trip. It's not a quick trip. It's either way, going to Memphis or going to Detroit. It's not a quick 20-minute turnaround trip. But the idea that somebody would sit there and plan out, and this is the kind of thing that I would imagine you would have to plan out details, minutes. It might not be to the minute, but 5 or 10-minute blocks of what are you going to do if this? If not this, then this. Scenarios. You're not going to have a one-day trip. You're not going to get up at midnight, be here at 6 o'clock in the morning, wait around for the opportunity to kidnap a kid. Yes, Kingsport is part of the Tri-Cities. Tri-Cities is Kingsport, Bristol, both Virginia and Tennessee. Either Virginia tries to separate itself a little bit, and then you have Johnson City, which is to our south. Yes, Carrie, you have, and I 100% agree that the only time you are going to go to Ben Hill Road, I'm going to add a little bit to that, is if you had you were lost or had business there. The only other time that you're going to go to Ben Hill Road is if you had family there. If you had family living there, you would know how to get there, the ins and outs and whatnot of how to get in and out of there, and exactly. It's you would know when to be there and when not to be there. You would know when to be there and when not to be there. So the point is this still. You're not, if you're from the what is the hillbilly area, the area known as being hillbillies, you're not going to plan a trip to come down to Northeast Tennessee to plot out kidnapping a kid and return home. But that's exactly what he is blaming a person of being from that area of the country as kidnapping Summer, coming down to Tennessee, finding his property and kidnapping Summer. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen that way. Rogersville actually does have a very nice swimming hole. And this is something I pointed out, Lisa. I've said it, and now I bounced around between a few different channels, making comments and participating in making points for other channels, and helping them with information about the region or giving my thoughts on what happened. As I said, sometimes I will speak unexpectedly speak prophetically until I say it, or I will be very predictive of what I said. And I'll give you an example of that in just a few moments. Lisa, for some reason, I think I've spoken to you before. I really do. But Rogersville has a very beautiful swimming hole area. And so does there's another little town off of 11 off of 9E, I believe it is, or 9W. That has anyway, I'm not thinking of the town's name. It's a really, really small town in this area. It basically has a food city, and if you take the road that's alongside the food city, back behind the food city and off to the right, if you're driving that way, it has a picnic area. It has a dock area, and it has a swimming hole. That years ago, it had they actually hired had a lifeguard. I don't know if they still do or don't, but in all honesty, those two areas would only be about 15-minute drives from where they live, Ben Hill Road is, to go swimming, and is a much, much better swimming area than going all the way into Kings, the area that's behind the for a second, guys. So, and I'm showing a low signal at the moment. So bear with me a second here. If I'm just waiting for my signal to get better, a little bit better. There we go. All right. So, so the area behind the stables is what I was saying. These other two swimming locations, and the one that's downriver from that swimming that the horse stables, that is part of the same park but on the opposite side. That is a much better place to go swimming than where they chose to go. It was a convenience to them to choose that particular location. But the seclusion of that location does always the seclusion of that location is a little suspicious. However, it's not completely out of place for somebody to go swimming in that area. It just usually when somebody does, they have ulterior motives for going to that area. Um, Whereas if they were to go to these other swimming locations, it's a little bit too public for what they may be wanting to do. Okay, so I've been saying a couple times that quite often I will come up with predictive or even possibly a what somebody may say is a prophetic uh, um, prophetic something prophetically said. And I'm going to mention one specific or three specific statements that I've made. And it's in my two of them are in my Discord, and the other one is was on John Q on March 20th. On March 20th, I said that this is going to land up being going the route of having a grand jury called to find out if they have enough evidence or they have enough of a theory that they can that the grand jury is willing and able to return charges. Then on March 29th, 9 days later, in my Discord, I said, uh, forgive me, I am actually scrolling back in my Discord right now to find the exact quote. Which I just had a few days ago. Bear with me, guys, just a moment. I apologize for my silence. I love it when I go to mention something and I just can't see it. um, you, do you remember what day we were talking about it, Carrie? I know it was March 29th that I originally said it, but we were talking about it in Discord since then. Saturday would have been the 9th. It was either the 9th or the 10th. I believe it was the 10th, but close enough for my liking. Um, well, I don't want to present this without showing proof that this was said and when I had said it, because it being hindsight is somebody being able to dismiss this as being hindsight at this point. But I'd be more than happy to furnish the proof to anybody that wants to question this. But on March 29th, I had said that I believe that the grand jury had already been called for this. Now, March 29th, I believe, was a Tuesday, either a Sunday or a Tuesday. And it was Tuesday. It was 2 weeks ago today. And it wasn't until 2 days later wasn't until Tuesday, 2 days later, the 31st, that everybody started on YouTube started noticing that Rogersville had a grand jury called for the 11th. Did I know that the grand jury had been called on the 29th? No, no, it wasn't public then. So this past weekend on the 10th, Carrie and I were actually talking about this. And I said that we're not going to find out any results from the grand jury on the 11th. I think that they're going. The exact quote I had given her was, "I think that they are going to be delaying any sort of charges being returned. I don't think it's going to be a no. They're not willing to entertain the thought of charges. It's that they want to interview more persons, and specifically, my thought was H. H has such a key point of this that the simple presentation that the prosecutor, if this grand jury, because we're still not going to know if they did not present it to the grand jury. H has such a view of what happened that day, and everybody keeps talking about him, and this is the reason I want to bring him up. Everybody keeps saying he's in detention right now. He's being detained. He's in juvie. He's not in juvie. What H is going through right now is crushing him morally and spiritually, to the point where he has needed, and I believe this actually goes back to beginning of the year, beginning of 2022, that he is needed. And again, this is something that I have no proof of. I'm only you can dismiss this as being for entertainment purposes if you want. But I honestly believe in my spirit and what I see going on in this case, that he has been crushed so badly that Summer has gone missing, and that something he could have seen could be information that is so important to Summer being this being resolved, that it has caused him so much mental strain, and that he actually landed up having to be committed into a mental hospital where he can again be given intensive therapy care. Intensive therapy care to the point where it's if he would have an access to a counselor, a therapist, 24/7. And this is a horrible thing for a teenager to go through. Absolutely horrible, because there have been threats made. And again, I will admit, I don't have proof of this. This is just what I believe in my spirit of what is going on. And when I say my spirit, yes, I am saying that I'm being uh, predictive and reading the situation, and going off of information. Lisa, please do not be offended. I am a person that can see and speak to spirits. I call myself an empath, but I have that intuitive ability to speak to spirits. And this is what I believe my spirit guides and the spirits that I've spoken to are conveying to me. that he is so lost, so hurt, and he beats himself up with over it daily, that he believes that he could have done something differently on June 15th that could have prevented her demise. I skip past the fact that she's missing, guys, ladies. And gentlemen, if somebody watches this later, I include you as well. Thank you very much for watching this. But I skip past that. She's not missing any longer. It's ridiculous to sit there and say that she's still alive. In my opinion, too much time has passed for that to be a possibility. But he beats himself up daily over that, thinking that he H thinks beats himself up so much over that, that he's put himself in such a mentally fragile position that he needed to have that intensive care. And I believe that he is actually still being held. Lisa, I'll answer. I'm going to mark this right here, Lisa. What you just said, because I have a little thing about that. That, but H has beaten himself up so much that he it landed up needing that intensive care that could only be given by a facility. I believe at this point he is still in there for protective reasons. He is not in legal trouble, but I think that his mental state is still so fragile and has so much work to do that even if a court trial were to happen tomorrow, that he would still be in that mental facility while the court trial was happening. The reason I brought him up originally was that I said the grand jury. I believe that the grand jury wants to speak to him. And if anybody knows how a grand jury works, is you hear 5 to 10 cases at one time. The prosecutor gets up, presents the information, allows has a Q&A session with the grand jury, however long they set a time limit for. Yes, they do set a time limit. And then they turn around and say, we need more information, so we're going to hold this for such and such date. Could be next week. Could be a month from now. Or we want to speak to and interview directly this person. Again, they'll hold it for such and such date for the prosecutor to present that witness so they can question them directly. Right, he is, but in the eyes of grand jury, it's not so much that right yet. It's not to the criminal aspect, the point, and where he would be Lisa. That's exactly how a grand jury works. What I'm saying is exactly how a grand jury works. So the once they get all their ducks in a the grand jury gets all the ducks in a row. There's 5 possible outcomes. The first one is what I was just saying. They want more information, or they want to speak to a particular person. Okay, and they'll set a date a hold, for it to be held over, and then they'll reconvene that grand jury on that date and review that information that they requested or speak or be able to interview the person. Right. Exactly. He only has to answer their questions. He does not have to expound on anything. It's a limited. A grand jury is a limited scope, and he would only have to answer the exact question. If they ask a yes or a no question, it's that's it. You just answer yes or no. Um, so the other outcomes, like, well, two of them actually. I said I apologize. I labeled them as one. Two of them are requests of more information or a request to speak to a witness, interview a witness. The third one would be no charges. No charges are being returned. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that the case is completely over for the prosecutor. It just means that when they have to start over, their theory doesn't work according to the grand jury, and they have to start over with a new grand jury on it. The fourth one, um, the fourth one is charges are going to be returned. Charges are returned. And usually when when that happens, it's not that there at that point there's no preliminary trials or anything like that. Just like what we saw with Sincere and Classic, when their parents were or adopted parents were arrested. It wasn't that they got arrested and then they went to a preliminary trial where they got to enter a guilty or not guilty plea. No, that's done and over with. You're being charged. Uh, okay, so that's four. The fifth one, the fifth one. Uh, bear with me a moment here. I know there's a fifth possible, but I don't remember what the fifth outcome, and I'm not finding what it is. But the four main results are the ones I mentioned. There is another outcome possibility, but like I apologize, I'm just running a mental blank on it. But the reason I brought up the grand jury is on Sunday, before the grand jury had convened, is that I don't believe that charges were going to come out on Monday. This is again a conversation that Carrie and I and another person that is in our in my Discord we're having. And it was to explain the grand jury because they live in another country that doesn't have a grand jury. And I don't believe that until they interview H, that having a charges returned is a possibility. Now, I highlighted Lisa's comment from a few moments ago, and I've had it up since then. And Lisa, you said, I believe she's in heaven. I 100% agree with you. She was an angel put on this earth, a living angel that unfortunately she was meant to experience what she experienced. But there's a bigger picture that she is going to be blowing up through her life. That is going to expose this generational issue and how a lot of times in families that this type of thing happens. The old saying of the further you look into the past is the further you look into the future. Absolutely, she did deserve better. But she is going to be the catalyst for a lot of things to change. And how CPS, not only in this particular area, but Child Protective Services everywhere are going to handle cases or reports of kids that are having issues with or believed to have been victims of SA from within the family. Is it going to be something that needs to be ironed out with time? Yes, it will need to be ironed out with time. But it's something that will be ironed out with time, and everything will be worked out. Where these are going to these kids that are experiencing this are going to have priority in CPS cases. You know, I agree. There are some YouTube creators out there that are just making this the content that they are for the sake of making content because the story has gotten so huge that they're just being a follower in a line of succession of other YouTube video creators making information, putting information out there. As I said, I'm not following this story or not reporting this story as everybody else. I'm looking at information, going back, looking at information. If you do go back and watch the first live I did, it's on the uppers. I did label it "The Truth" versus "Their Truth," and it is the title is appropriate because knowing, saying that there is the uppers, but not identifying who they are, not saying how you're accountable to them, and then finding out who the uppers are, or at least what I believe the uppers are. I'll put it that way. I think I did a pretty good job getting that information together to show who the uppers are, or very well could be. It's not. I'm not covering Summer Wells. Everybody at this point knows what happened to Summer Wells. I'm simply sitting here looking at information that people missed. Glaring to me, it's glaringly obvious information that at the time I may have found that information and did not know how it fit in. But when I made the video or explained today, I see how it fits in. But Lisa, you're exactly right. There are so many people out there that are making a mockery out of Summer Wells and her disappearance, and what they're doing, they're doing it as um, uh, a um, just to have content. Their heart's not into it. No, Carrie, I understood exactly what you meant. The Summer Wells has a very special place, not related, not ever known, and have sat in on several spirit box sessions and have conducted a couple myself where Summer Wells comes through and has had opportunity to speak with her spirit, and she's such a pure energy that she has gained a special place in my heart. Right, right, and that's how her own. Okay, so from day one of covering this on other channels and speaking on other channels, I've said a couple things. Um, I've actually had basically my own language about this, and some of it I've explained, like why I refer to the Wells property as being a horse farm. It was a running place. It was not the property was so worn down that it was a trafficking place. And no, I don't mean SA trafficking. I simply mean that it was a crash place, a crash pad place where people can go there, party it up, have a place that they know it's safe to hide and hide from the police and take off very easily from. The the thing I've always said about Summer, or I've always thought about Summer, is she was just a precious little angel. And when this happened, and you saw how much that the parents did not care, and being able to sit back and observe what the community itself, Kingsport, Rogersville, both Sullivan and Hawkins counties, how much they've stepped up and what they did from day one of of I can't. It's countless how many people would show up with a after going down taking a trip from Kingsport, from Rogerville, from the Beach Creek area, even go out of their way to either go over to Bristol or go down to Johnson City to go to Sam's, pick up cases of water, cases of food, snacks, type of stuff, and basically resupply and keep supplied a canteen truck. A lot of fire departments call it a canteen truck. Some people just not everywhere calls it the same thing, but it's basically like having a one of those food trucks where a group of people can go in, make food, chill water, and serve the fire department, and in this case, the searchers from that the food that was being donated. Right, Gary, exactly, exactly. You know, I was mentioning this earlier with the helicopters, the search at night. It kept Don Wells awake, and he would complain about the noise that was being made to search for Summer Wells. The audacity to complain about the noise that was being searched that you made to search for your child. I don't know about anybody else. I'd be going out and getting one of those, I don't know how big they are, those big steel metal pots that are a lot of organizations, churches have where that make like 20 cups of coffee at one time or 40 cups or whatever it is. Huge baskets, percolator type deals, plug it in and it does its thing. Make huge amounts of coffee. Be drinking half of that myself every single night to stay awake and let the searchers know, I got fresh coffee in the house and let me know if you need a refill in a mug. The least you could do is that. Yes, Gary, I'm very politely saying that it's when I say it, call it a horse house, horse farm. Very trying to very politely call it a trap, call it anything but a trap house, but that's exactly what it is was. Lisa, exactly. I would have begged for that noise. My kid was missing. It was I would have begged for that noise. I would if I didn't hear that noise, I would go down. That's when I would go down to the bottom of the hill, go over to where that search area was being centered from, and go, "Hey, what's going on? It's too quiet tonight. What's going on, guys?" And but you never have that moment of the police saying, other than when he interviewed for the TBI to with the press. He interviewed for the TBI. It wasn't that he wanted to have an interview with the press at that point. They were still trying to get their narrative in line. What their story was going to be, they're still trying to get that information down and all their ducks in a row. So all the adults and the oldest child was going to be saying the same exact thing. Exactly, Lisa. Exactly. It's about them. It's don't focus on her. She's not the important one here. In fact, she was too pretty. So was Rose Bly. They were both too pretty. They both had the same bone structure to the face. They were too pretty for that family. This is a family that celebrated and encouraged androgyny when it comes to women. Take a look at a photo of the grandmother. Take a look at the photo of Candace. Then take a look at the photo of Summer, and take a look at a photo of Rose Bly, and tell me why they were signaled out. You have two different generational issues going on here that happen to coincide and meet a perfect storm because they got away with it in one generation. They figured they can get away with the same thing in another generation. But this time, because media and news cycle is so rapid these days, usually I'm the first person to get is first person is to say pump the brakes on a news cycle. Let's figure out what is really going on before we report before you report this, before you run with the story. What are you really saying? What are they really saying? They said what? Figure it out. But this is one time that the one time that I will say that the news cycle being so quick that they're not going to get away with what they did to a generation ago. No, Carrie, you're fine. This is if Carrie, I respond to the chat room, but as I had said, when I decided that I was going to go live and I was making you um, a mod, I don't have an issue with anything that you have been saying. Um, this is territory that you run. I focus on, yes, I respond to what you guys are saying if something jumps out at me, but when I first start, I'm focusing on what my point is. So don't apologize for not having a filter. Friday is 10 months of this. 10 months. I don't know about any other creator, but I'm sure they're having fun with making content, and some people are having fun with making content. And to them, it's just going to be going on to another story. But for myself, the reason I take the angle that I'm taking on this case is we got to come up with not that the police haven't already exhausted these answers or these questions, but the more information that's put out there on the internet is the more information that the people will know. And if we're thinking about it, the police have already thought about it. And maybe for some reason, the exhaustion in creators' voices of saying, when is this going to be enough? When is the family going to finally come up and say the truth? Admit to what they know. Because as much as I love talking to people and I'll come up with something to talk about next, a new angle of something, and don't think this is going to be my last video either, but enough's enough. Not only does the Tri-Cities area need to heal, Because understand it this way: in 2 years' time, this area has gone through searching for two missing kids that have come up being are going to probably end up being um, the result of is finding a child that has met their demise. Two, where else in the country have you has an area gone through that? And I'm not including like an accidental drowning. I'm including this is going to be filicide. Parents that have gone ahead and thought it was in their in their right frame of mind to cause the demise of their kid. Tri-Cities area needs to heal. And it starts with the Wells family. I'm not putting pressure on the police because I think they've done an admirable job in this. But it is time for the police, excuse me, not the police. It is time for the Wells to step up and just open their mouths, speak about what happened, and unabashedly put the truth out there. It's that time. 10 months is 10 months too long for this. This is an incident that should have never happened in the first place, but it did. Um, at first, I would say that it was with cautious optimism that the Tri Cities area spoke about Summer Wells. They do in circles. When it's brought up, when there's a news break, there's still talk about her. When there's a news article or something, a news story that comes out, it gets brought up again. No, Lisa, I understand the question perfectly. And I don't think there's your question had any ill intent, so don't worry about apologizing. But at the same time, it's that cautious optimism is um, um, it's looked at this. We you get the feeling just locally that the Wells are concealing something. Their own family from across town. Granted, they're not known to be any better at telling the truth than the Wells are by reputation lately, but it still is that the family is trying when the public talks about it, it's at the point where the family doesn't care, and we have to go on with our lives. It's not that we don't care at this point, and it's not that the community considers Summer just as they did with Evelyn Boswell, that the child belongs to the community, not so much the kid belongs in CPS or they belong in because the child is a child of the community. It's the old saying of it takes a community to raise a child, but this child doesn't belong to that family. This child belongs to the community. There there has not been for a while. I will agree. There has not been for a while.
This is where I'm saying it's cautious optimism. It's the community has realized that there's something seriously wrong with the family, and what the family is promoting or trying to push is what happened, and they're sitting back and waiting for that other shoe to drop. Yeah. Oh, watch out, Carrie. She's been kind of desperate there lately. There, so the rumors have been. So I don't know about doing that. um, she might like to go now for some pancakes and coffee a little too much there. Yeah. So uh, the short of what happened with Evelyn Boswell is that Megan decided that she was going to try to imitate what happened with Anthony down in Florida. Can't remember that little girl's name. I don't understand. I don't like to put a focus on who the culprit was. I rather put the focus on the victim. I don't like to try to say the person that did its name. I try to say the victim's name. So I can't remember the little girl's name. Her last name was Anthony. It was in Florida. So Megan tried to do a variation or tried to imitate what happened in that case, but her lies were so transparent and thin that she was they were able to arrest her immediately, almost immediately. Thank you, Lisa. Kaylee. That sounds right to me. And it's one of those names that living in the Tri Cities. Forgive me, everybody, especially if your name is Kaylee. It is Kaylee, Kayla, Skylar, Skyla are extremely popular female names in the Tri Cities area and variations of Kaylee that it should stick in my mind, but it just never does. Well, I've actually stayed on way longer than I anticipated tonight. And I I'm really out of things to say. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys right now for a little bit. See if you have any questions that you want to ask. It could be about this case. It could be about another case that you've heard about that you think the way I present things or way I look at things, that you'll be interested in, and getting myself to look at it and my perspective on it. Well, Lisa, thank you very much. I've enjoyed you being here. Please don't be. I know you said you shared this to your Facebook group, but please, um, yes, Lisa, I am working on that. This is only the second time I've gone live. It's been within a week that I've done so. I don't have like a set schedule. As I get more comfortable with doing this, I will bring up the frequency of doing so. It's just right now, I'm not pushing that or forcing that to develop. I'm just letting it develop. Lisa, when I do have a live, I will. I'll at least give an 8 hour notice. Post a live, post a thing saying I'm going to have a live at least 8 hours before, because like I said, it's an infrequent thing right now, and I'm just letting it slowly develop on it naturally. I'm not trying to force it like I got to be live every single night right now. So as the frequency that increases, it will, I'll figure out a better schedule of when I want to be live and whatnot with time. Like I think I posted or I had set it up today around noonish, maybe 1:30 at the latest, that I was going to be live tonight. No, Carrie, she didn't. No, she didn't. Because she thought she could wiggle out of it by giving misinformation to the detectives, and then turn around and give different misinformation to the news. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. I'm just, I'm going to provoke thought. I'm going to doing it in a no drama way, just like you see with John Q, Miss Q, their lives. It's no drama. We're going to provoke thought. We're going to provoke intelligent thought, and we're going to inspire others to have intelligent thought about what's going on with cases. You're right, Gary. Exactly. They just put it all over YouTube. And the way they did was, I'm going to use a water gun, whatever you want to call it, uh, super soaker. And they just sat there and they just aimed to spray and hit everybody and anybody that was possible, that would sit there and listen to them talk. Um, do I think that that yes, I think that was known, and it was considered to be an acceptable practice of the house. Acceptable. So what I mean by that, let's take a look at relationships between men and women first, just to draw an example of that. What I mean, um, in the United States, primarily the relationship is monogamy, one man, one woman, and that's the United States culture. We're conservative about that. We are it's anything beyond that is out of the norm. Do you get these little pockets of areas within the United States that do believe in other forms of relationships, where they believe in polyamory? And I'm not trying to go into a deep discussion on this, so please, I'm just touching on this. And then you go over to a country like France, where it's almost the opposite. It's socially acceptable and almost the norm for the relationship to be non-monogamous. It's kind of one of those deals where it's what the family considers to be socially acceptable. Unfortunately, in this particular household, that was socially acceptable, and it should never have been socially acceptable. I can understand you have, working on a greasy car or working on an engine, and a kid is helping his dad. Ladies, I don't mean that women can't work on cars. I'm just using this as an example. And for some reason, some sort of fluid splashes the kid in the face. And the best and easiest way to go and get that grease or whatever that substance off is to go and strip that boy down to his birthday suit and throw him in the shower. Well, it should be that his dad is there with him. Even if the dad goes and gets in the shower with him, or just leaves his clothes on and gets soaking wet. And that is a whole different. I know I'm describing a whole different scenario, but my intent of doing so is that is what should be socially acceptable up until a boy is a certain age, 8, 9 years old, whatever. I'm just throwing an arbitrary number at it. I don't want to sit here and say, oh, I know the best. I'm not trying to pretend that. But because male anatomy, and yes, if you look at what society is going through right now, I'm treading on dangerous waters a little bit here. Male anatomy, that's naturally and correctly the way to be. Reverse the roles. If it was the little girl that was helping, that she's a tomboy and she's good with engines, or loves helping her dad and learning how to work on a car engine, you would escort her in to her mother and say, hey, look, she needs to be in the shower right now. Get her washed. Get her head to toe washed. She got some whatever in her face. And then be on the same time, depending on what fluid it is, call the hospital, call the poison hotline, whatever, and be like, hey, this is what happened. We have the kid in the shower getting washed down right now. What do we need to do next? There should not be male and female child, or female adult and male child in the shower together, in the bath together. Lisa, I'm not so sure. It's an I don't care, as it is. Um, she just wanted to draw a blind eye. She wanted to draw a blind eye to what was going on. And I'm not blaming a woman for this. I'm not saying it's the fault of a woman. But it comes down to a basic psychology precedent that a woman has. A woman will sometimes, and ladies, hear me out. Please hear me out. If a woman has a flaw, it's that she will try to fix a person, fix a guy. She will try to fix a relationship before she goes and says, there's a major problem. Sometimes a woman trying to fix the problem only makes the problem worse, because in doing so, they can realize they can't fix it and turn a blind eye to it, that causes the problem to get worse. Now, I'm not saying this is a problem that women are. I'm saying that this is a natural thing that a woman will do. And I don't want to come across as saying I believe it's a negative. Please, I really don't. When I've been in relationships, if my woman comes up to me and says, starts complaining about something, I don't pretend that I know what she wants to hear from me at that moment. I simply say to her, okay, so we have three options. Are you needing me to listen? Are you wanting my support? Or do you want me to resolve the problem? And depending on which one the woman that I'm dating chooses, in either case, we'll sit down, we'll have a very real conversation about what is stirring in them, that's bothering them so hard. The third option, I found that most women will choose. Sometimes the second one, but most time they'll choose the third. So they want my input when to be offered. And they may not like what they hear, but it's that's the point, is that it's the input that they needed to hear. I'm a person that I can't sleep with a shirt on. I can so I and I only can wear a pair of shorts, like regular sleeping shorts. Um, so shirtless is not so much the issue, because I've actually been woken up in the middle of the night by a child saying I'm going to be sick and having to rush them into the bathroom. But there's nothing they're going to see. I for sure wish I can find a woman again in my life that can see that in me and would like to try to have a family someday. Oh, yeah, no, no, definitely am not. No, um, no, yeah, and believe it or not, I've been like this since I was a senior in high school. Um, I can remember back to being a senior in high school and leaving outside of Philadelphia area. And I'm a huge, I love sports. I'm a sports fan. Okay. I like the Yankees. I love my Philadelphia Eagles, and I love my Philadelphia Flyers. I'm not a huge basketball fan, and being a Phillies fan, I just wow, that's just a whole um, whole thing. Going back to the 70s and 80s. You can look up their history to find out probably why I was not a Phillies fan back then. I can tell you players from that team and situations that happened from that team, but ugh. Anyway, um, so back when I was a senior in high school, we had a class, and I took this class because I was interested in becoming an education major, and in high school, in college, and knowing that the program that this course, particular course, had offered, it basically offered an introduction without going through all the classes of theories and this that and other of with guidance of a teacher of running a classroom for preschoolers. And you had opportunities to be the teacher of the day, so to speak, where you were the one in you were the senior that was you were the senior class member that was in charge, and you were the teacher that day. And so you had to come up with um, a plan for the day, and you know this, that, and the other. And I enjoyed it. It's why I chose to pursue going into being an education major, but was unable to complete it. The One of the activities that we had to do with the was a what if scenario type of deal, and the what ifs, and this just popped in my head, so forgive me. I'm trying to word this right as I say it. The scenario that was it's just a what if scenario. What if type of scenario where you get questions and you have to answer them. It's just a thinking on your feet type of exercise. Scenario I was given was you're married, you have a kid or kids. The number of kids doesn't matter. And your spouse had been ill. Flu, I think was the example. Had finally had finally recovered and gotten over it, and was feeling healthy, and she felt like she needed to have a day out or catch up with her friends for an evening. You had tickets to, and it was presented to me as being either an Eagles game or a Flyers game because they knew I liked either one. You had tickets to a sports, either a Flyers or an Eagles game that you would have to give up in order for her to be able to go out for the evening. What is your response? What would you do? Well, my response was it's a game. It's not something I can't put on a TV or put on a radio and enjoy still. It just wouldn't be the same experience as being there to in person. So I'd give it my ticket to somebody that would enjoy it. And um, the the response from some of the guys that were in the class were like, "What are you talking about? You're giving up a ticket to a sports event so your wife can go out for an evening?" It's like, "Yeah. Yeah, I would." And Carrie, I'll answer that question in a moment if that was to me. I was like, "Yeah, I would," because it's not fair to her to be having cooped up for in the house for about a week without seeing her friends or catching some fresh air or just being able to get out of the house and after feeling better. So there's no reason I can't listen to see the game on the TV or listen to it on the radio. They're like, well, what if you're in an area that the power goes out? I was like, the area I'm living in, the power goes out here means more than likely the power's not out at the sporting event. And if it was, they probably have already delayed the game so the power can be restored and would still be on the radio if the power had not gone out in that area. So I can still hear what's going on, still be responsible to the children that woman, my supposed spouse and I had. The guys in that class, and even the women couldn't understand the maturity that I was giving an answer of. The teacher had to stop the class and point out what I was actually saying. But I've always been like that, is my point. Even since I was, like I say, a high school senior, I was always at that point. Um, Carrie, if that answers to the questions to me, if I met the right woman and she was capable of having kids, and I felt that the situation was the right situation, then yeah, I would. But it's like one of those deals where it's either meant to be or it's not meant to be, and I'm not trying to search or hunt down one or the other. Um, August, I will be 45. Just this week, I feel old, like really old. That's all. Has everything to do with only child turning 18. You know, yeah, I'm sure that some may know that feeling all too well. Well, Lisa, again, that's what I'm going to aim to do is I'm going to try to provoke thought that is worth entertaining. Sometimes the topic might seem a little far fetched out there, and by the end of it, I hope that I reel it back in to being like, wow, that really makes sense. All right, ladies. I don't know about you, but I just saw what time it was and how much time I've been speaking. Uh, I think it's time for me to shut it down for the evening and save my voice for work tomorrow. And call it a night. So, ladies and gentlemen and ladies, if you are still around, I want to thank you very much for listening. And this is also not only to the people that are here live with me, and I hope that you do join me live next time. If you're not, if you're listening on a replay, and, uh, well, I'm not like I said, I'm not setting a um, right now. I'm not setting a definite. I'm going to be on live next week type of deal. If something strikes me big, I will definitely jump on. Please like and subscribe. That way, you will know that if I'm going live, you'll have a notice, a notification to let you know. If you hit that bell, and all the other things that normal YouTube creators say about that, like, subscribe, and leave a comment, because that algorithm can be a bear. And that helps, apparently, supposedly. Carrie, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, anyway, I wish everybody a good night. And glad to see I'm getting some new people, and I appreciate Lisa. As I said, I appreciate you specifically sharing this with other people, and I hope that the way I present things does help this channel grow. But at this point, I'm going to say good night, and I hope everybody has a wonderful tomorrow.